Welcome to listening to stories on Kevin TV audiobook channel. Chapter 246, Convincing the Three Pillars of Heaven. The Enlightened One, perhaps having sensed something familiar within me, agreed to meet me, even inviting me into his celestial chamber to chat. Yuan continued, sprinkling some nonsense into his truth, making it seem as if the Enlightened One already knew that he'd become Heaven's second envoy. The moment I entered the celestial chamber, I sensed a heavenly aura descend upon me, and that's when I met and had a conversation with Heaven, who wanted me to be its second envoy because the Enlightened One was lacking something that I possessed. "The Enlightened One is lacking. That's blasphemy," Patriarch G exclaimed in disbelief. "It's because of His Majesty that we are able to live peacefully. His contributions to this world are endless, and he was also the first one to discover celestial qi." Yuan calmly replied, "I am not denying the Enlightened One's achievements. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to satisfy Heaven, hence why I am here right now." He narrowed his eyes slightly and continued, "Or are you refuting Heaven's will?" "That wasn't my intention." Patriarch G swallowed nervously. Matriarch Tian suddenly raised her hand and asked, "Do you have any evidence to prove your claim of being Heaven's second envoy?" Yuan turned to look at Patriarch Sun and said, "Patriarch Sun is my evidence, as he was there as a witnessness." Patriarch Sun nodded and revealed, "When I was at the Celestial Hall, I watched him and the Enlightened One emerge from the Celestial Chamber together. Not only that, but the Enlightened One also treated him like an equal, even removing his hood and face veil. If you doubt my words, I am willing to swear an oath. But that only proves he went inside the celestial chamber with the Enlightened One and became acquainted with each other. It in no way proves that he was chosen by Heaven to be its second envoy," Patriarch Tian said with a doubtful look on his face. Yuan then asked, "In that case, may I ask how the Enlightened One proved himself?" One of the elders answered at once, "His Majesty revealed countless cultivation techniques and pill recipes through Heaven's will, knowledge that had never existed before, propelling the cultivation world forward by leaps and bounds." "That's it?" Yuan asked, one eyebrow raised, clearly unimpressed. "He would also occasionally receive prophecies, visions of the future," the elder hurriedly added. "Our war with the giant race is one of many such examples." Although Yuan could argue these claims, he decided not to expose himself as someone trying to challenge the Enlightened One for now, and instead of refuting them, he said, "If it's just pill recipes and cultivation techniques, I have also received many of them from Heaven, and I am willing to share them to prove myself." As someone who has lived multiple lifetimes and has hundreds of millions of years of experience, there was nobody in this world who possessed as much knowledge as him, not even close. How do we know that these techniques and pill recipes are truly from Heaven? What if you created them yourself? Another elder suddenly questioned. When the Enlightened One shared his techniques, he was not even 100 years old, so it was impossible for him to have prepared them beforehand. You, on the other hand, had plenty of time. After a moment of silence, Yuan sighed and said, "You know what? I have a better method to prove myself. Give me a moment. I will be right back." Before anyone could say another word, Yuan disappeared from the platform like a ghost. Minutes later, he returned, but he was not alone, and he'd returned with the Enlightened One by his side. Your Majesty!" Everyone there subconsciously lowered their heads the moment they realized it was him, so they were unable to see the anger on his face. "Enlightened One," my dear friend Yuan said loudly, "why don't you serve as my proof and tell everyone here that Heaven has chosen me as its second envoy? You know what will happen if you refuse, right?" Yuan then said to him using voice transmission, "I will cripple you in front of everyone before killing you like a pig." The Enlightened One began to tremble, the threat shattering his resolve as every thought of resisting Yuan vanished in an instant. It's true, Heaven has chosen him as its second envoy. Even though he wasn't forced to lie or anything, the Enlightened One still felt disgusted, as if he'd just stepped on shit. Yet there was nothing he could do right now but endure it. "Just you wait, you bastard. I will make sure to repay this humiliation 1,000-fold, no matter how long it takes," he cursed inwardly. With the Enlightened One's confirmation, any doubt about Yuan's identity had been washed away, and he was quickly accepted as the second heaven's envoy by the three pillars of heaven. Yuan dismissed everyone at the assembly, but the family heads shortly after. I know this may be too sudden for you, but it's just as sudden for me, so I will need some time to organize myself. I'll contact you again once I'm ready, he said to them. Take as much time as you need, Your Majesty. You can just address me as Senior Tian. I don't like too much formality. I understand. About your living quarters, we'll prepare something more fitting for you as soon as possible, said Patriarch's son. There's no need. I am satisfied with my current place. As you wish. Some time later, Yuan returned to his living quarters. When he arrived, he noticed two people standing at the doorstep. One of them was Jing Ruye, and the other was Sun Rushi, who had emerged from her seclusion shortly before Yuan entered the celestial chamber. Yuan wasn't surprised by her appearance, since he already noticed her during the assembly. It's been a while, Ru. I need to speak with you in private, Sun Rushi suddenly interrupted, wearing a serious expression on her face. Okay. Without another word, they entered the building while Jing Ruye remained outside. What's wrong? Are you upset that I came here? Yuan asked. However, Sun Rushi didn't respond. She merely stood there silently inspecting him from head to toe. Rushi, Yuan raised his eyebrows, looking confused by her actions. After another moment of silence, Sun Rushi spoke in a solemn voice. I will get straight to the point. She took a deep breath before continuing. Who the hell are you? Eh? Yuan's eyes widened with surprise at her unexpected question. What do you mean? It's me, Tian. Stop right there, Sun Rushi said flatly. You may look like Tian Yang and sound like him, and you may have convinced others, but you won't fool me. Yuan was truly bewildered by this situation. After pondering for a bit, he spoke, If I am not Tian Yang, then how do I know about... He proceeded to recall specific information about her and their time together, something that only the two of them would know. Sun Rushi gritted her teeth, glaring at him with blazing fury. What the hell did you do to Tian Yang? She roared. Did you steal his memories? Her cultivation erupted as she spoke, surging outward without restraint. Chapter 2347, Imposter, Calm Down, Rushi. Yuan shouted in a somewhat panicked voice as her overwhelming pressure descended on him like a mountain collapsing from above. I never gave you permission to use my name, you damn imposter, Sun Rushi snapped, her aura growing more violent and powerful. Seriously, what the hell is going on? Yuan cried inwardly, completely bewildered and puzzled by the situation. Is this part of the trial? He couldn't think of another reason why Sun Rushi was acting like this. I will give you one last chance. Identify yourself, and tell me what you did to Tian Yang. Sun Rushi shouted as she retrieved her golden wheel, her entire being seeping with immense killing intent. After a moment of silence, Yuan replied, My name is Yuan. I may not be the Tian Yang you know, but I am definitely Tian Yang. What bullshit is that? She sneered, refusing to believe him. This left him perplexed, as he couldn't think of any other explanation that wouldn't sound even more crazy. Eventually, Yuan sighed and asked, How can you tell that I am not Tian Yang? Your soul, she calmly replied. I have never told anyone, but I had developed a technique that allows me to see another's soul, and your soul is completely different from Tian Yang. No, it's actually similar, but it's too old to be Tian Yang. My soul, huh? Yuan muttered. Then can you tell how old my soul is? He then asked. I cannot, but I tell that it's old. In fact, it's much older than anything I have seen before. Just how old are you? If we're only talking about the age of my soul, which has experienced several reincarnations and multiple different eras, at least a few 100 million, I guess. Several 100 million years old? There's no way I doubt this world is even that old, she exclaimed. Yuan shrugged. I don't know what else to tell you. Sun Rushi was speechless, but she eventually asked, What happened to Tian Yang? Is he still alive? Well, Yuan wasn't sure how to explain further, actually. Right as he opened his mouth, The entire building shook violently. An earthquake? Sun Rushi looked around. No, that shouldn't be possible. The entire continent is protected by formations that prevent these sorts of disturbances. Yuan spread his divine sense, but he couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. A few seconds later, the entire world trembled again. Is this caused by an eternal? Yuan wondered inwardly. The shaking did not stop. In fact, it grew more frequent and violent. Yuan turned to look at Sun Rushi and said, "Let's postpone this conversation for later. Right now we need to," before he could finish his sentence. Yuan's vision blurred and he found himself in a familiar place. What? He was suddenly back inside the stairway to heaven. Tian'er, what is going on? He asked out loud. In the next moment, Tian'er emerged from the void with a troubled face. I apologize for interrupting your trial, Master, but we have a situation, she said. Some troublemakers are attacking the stairway to heaven, she proceeded to explain. What? Yuan raised an eyebrow. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't be a cause for concern, she said. But this situation is different. We're being attacked by multiple individuals simultaneously across several realms. Moreover, these people are wielding a power that is similar to eternal essence. Although it was forbidden to attack the stairway to heaven, this wasn't the first time someone had attempted to force their way inside. Of course, none had ever come close to succeeding. At this rate, they might actually be able to force their way in, Tian'er said, worry etched across her face as she bit her nails. Is there anything I can do? Yuan asked. Tian'er shook her head and said, I'll do something about it. Unfortunately, this means you'll be unable to continue the trial and you'll have to return later. That's fine. Then I'll send you to that place right now. All right, stay safe. Tian'er snapped her fingers, creating a portal before Yuan. Yuan had a lot of questions for Tian'er, but with how urgent she seemed, he decided to save them for next time. Don't forget about me. Kula's voice resounded as his soul appeared beside Yuan. The next moment, Yuan stepped into the portal, disappearing from the stairway to heaven. Once Kula's also entered the portal, Tian'er immediately activated the stairway to heaven's defensive features, something that had never been utilized until this moment. Meanwhile, outside the stairway to heaven, the troublemakers across different realms were taken by surprise when the stairway to heaven suddenly vanished into thin air. Where did it go? Damn it. I was so close to cracking it open. With the stairway to heaven gone, the troublemakers did not linger and quickly left the scene. The stairway to heaven's sudden disappearance was quickly noticed, and word spread like wildfire throughout the 9 heavens, plunging all 9 realms into chaos. What? The stairway to heaven vanished? That's impossible. It's true, I saw it with my own eyes. It was gone, and at the location where the stairway once stood, there were corpses everywhere. If the stairway to heaven is gone, how will people traverse between worlds now? It'll likely be impossible for the majority of people, and only those who can traverse the starry sky will be able to move between realms. I heard from a friend that he witnessed from afar someone attacking the stairway to heaven right before it disappeared. That must be why it disappeared. What kind of lunatic would attack the stairway to heaven, and for what reason? It's like burning the only bridge across a raging river. My only concern right now is whether the stairway to heaven will return. In just a few days, news of the stairway to heaven's disappearance reached almost every single ear in the 9 heavens. Of course, this included the Celestial Emperor, who was just as baffled as everyone. Chapter 2348, Stairway to Heaven's Sudden Disappearance. What? What did you just say? The stairway to heaven has vanished into thin air. The Celestial Emperor glared at the messenger with a deep frown on his face. When did this happen, and do we have any idea why it happened? He quickly asked. It happened only 4 days ago, said the messenger. According to rumors, someone was attacking the stairway to heaven before its disappearance, and it wasn't just a single individual. Apparently, there was a witness at every single realm from the 1st heaven to the 9th heaven, implying it was a coordinated attack. The messenger continued. There were also many casualties at the stairway to heaven's location. We believe they were all killed by these individuals to keep their identity hidden. Unfortunately, we do not know of their motives at this moment. The Celestial Emperor pondered for a moment before speaking out loud to himself. The stairway to heaven isn't any ordinary treasure. It's not the first time someone has attacked it either. Yet this is the first time it reacted in such a fashion, meaning that these individuals were not ordinary cultivators. After a moment of silence, he gave a clear command. Find out who these individuals are and their motives. With the stairway to heaven gone, transportation between the realms will essentially become impossible for most people, and we have no idea when the stairway to heaven will return, if it ever will. What a troublesome situation. What should we do if the stairway to heaven never returns? The messenger swallowed nervously at this possibility before asking in a trembling voice. We'll have to replace it with something similar, he said. The stairway to heaven was created many eras ago. Nowadays, there are master blacksmiths who are capable of creating something similar, so it's not completely hopeless. I'll give it a few years to return before we make a new one. Sometime later, the Celestial Emperor made a public announcement, reassuring the world that he would get to the bottom of the situation and replace the stairway to heaven if necessary. Though the Celestial Emperor succeeded in calming the people, it did little to truly ease the situation or resolve the problem. The stairway to heaven was still missing, and replacing it could take decades, an unbearably long time for those living in the lower heavens. Meanwhile, after leaving the stairway to heaven, Yuan found himself standing in a vast green plain. Two solitary buildings stood only several meters apart, the only structures in sight. Above him, the sky was a clear blue, and the spiritual energy in the area was unfathomably rich, so dense that it made even the eighth heaven's spiritual energy seem pale by comparison. This is my personal world. Yuan immediately recognized the location as he'd spent tens of thousands of years in this place just recently. This place looks exactly as I remember, Yuan muttered, somewhat surprised by how little had changed. Anyway, let's get to work. He immediately retrieved the sword-shaped token given to him by Zhao Tengming, which was entrusted to him by the immortal monarch. What's that? Kulas asked out of curiosity. The key to my storage in this place, which happens to contain countless treasures that I have gathered throughout many lifetimes. Hopefully, I already have enough materials to craft your new vessel. Huh. Why do you need a key to a storage that's within your personal world? It's not like anyone can enter here. I don't know, Yuan replied with a nonchalant shrug. In fact, I don't even remember where I hid the entrance to this place. Fortunately, I remember that I can access this place directly through the stairway to heaven. How can you forget the entrance to your own world? Kulas would shake his head if he had one right now. Then, do you know where it's located? You should know, since your soul followed my precious incarnations around. Nope. It's not like I am constantly conscious during that time, as I would slumber from time to time, and you tossed me inside the stairway to heaven once it was completed. Is that so? Yuan entered one of the two buildings shortly after and went directly to the basement. However, before he could even access the basement, he had to deal with the formations that protected it. Fortunately, these formations recognized his soul and allowed him to bypass them without any issues. You'll have to wait here. Yuan stopped Kulas, who attempted to follow him. Since these formations only recognize Ren Shah and me, your soul will be obliterated if you try to enter. What the hell? You should have told me that before you even approached this place. To think I almost died just now. Can you imagine how humiliating it would be to perish in such a fashion after surviving so many ordeals? Kulas exclaimed, hastily backing away from the door to the basement. Are there any more death traps in this place that I should be aware of? He then asked. Not that I remember. That's not good enough. I'll wait for you outside just in case. Kulas sighed as he left the house altogether. What about me? Yu Ning, who was residing within his dantian, asked in a worried voice. You'll be fine. Moments later, Yuan began descending the staircase to the basement. The path downward seemed endless, the steps stretching as far as the eye could see, reminiscent of the stairway to heaven itself. Eventually, they reached a point where the walls vanished entirely, leaving behind nothing but a pitch-black expanse, as though they had stepped into the void. Yet, despite the darkness, Yuan could still see where he was walking. The steps suddenly began to split into multiple paths like branches on a tree, clearly trying to mislead him. However, with the sword-shaped token in his grasp, Yuan was able to discern the true path. After what felt like an eternity, Yuan finally reached the end of the path, greeted by a lone golden door that exuded a profound radiance, illuminating the surrounding darkness.